The anteroom smelled of cut roses and new carpet, and Delia Voss had been standing in it for 11 minutes before she understood that something had gone wrong. She was 23 years old and 3 months into the job, junior event coordinator, Merrill Ashton Hall of Arts, responsible that evening for the pre-gala jury intake, water pitchers, name cards, the printed binders, straightforward work. She was good at it. She had spent the afternoon pressing the binders' corners flat and verifying each juror's portfolio number against the master list, and when the jurors began arriving at 6:30, she greeted them at the door and walked them to their seats and felt, for the first time in a while, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The woman had arrived at 20 minutes to 7. She was perhaps 70, though Delia would later find it difficult to say precisely. There was something about the way she moved through a doorway, unhurried and straight, that made age feel beside the point. She wore a deep charcoal jacket, a single strand of pale amber at her throat, and she carried nothing but a slim envelope of documents and a calm that seemed to have been assembled over many decades and reinforced by use. She gave Delia her name, Marguerite Ashton Vernal, and Delia checked it against the list and found it there, third from the top. Juror, senior panel, choreography review. She showed her to the end seat, the one nearest the window, and Mrs. Ashton Vernal thanked her quietly and set her envelope on the table and looked out at the courtyard below, where the evening light was going amber in the plane trees. Delia was refilling the water pitchers when the program director came in. His name was Harlan Price, and he had been appointed to the post 8 weeks earlier by a subcommittee Delia had never met. He was polished in the way that certain men learn to be polished. The good suit, the steady eye contact, the vocabulary of institutional care. He moved through the anteroom with the ease of someone who had decided, some time ago, that rooms arranged themselves around him, and Delia had in 3 months learned to make herself small when he passed. He went directly to Mrs. Ashton Vernal. Delia did not intend to hear what he said. She was at the far end of the table, and the room was filling with the low murmur of arriving jurors, and she had a pitcher in each hand and a reason to be looking at the glasses. But the room had a particular acoustic, the low ceiling, the marble surround, and Harlan Price had the voice of a man who had never needed to lower it, and so she heard most of it. He was sorry to catch her just now. He had meant to reach out earlier in the week. The panel, as constituted this season, was being rebalanced to reflect, and here he used a phrase that Delia would replay many times afterward, the profile they were building toward. The choreography submission she'd entered had been set aside, he said. Not rejected, he was careful to say. Set aside. And her seat on the jury had been reallocated to better align the evening's representation with their curatorial direction. He said all of this as though he were reading from a document that was entirely reasonable. He said he hoped she understood. Mrs. Ashton Vernal looked at him for a moment without speaking. Delia set down both pitchers. The woman's expression did not shift in any way that Delia could name. She did not argue. She did not ask him to repeat himself. She said, simply and without any particular emphasis, that she would like the name of the board chair, and that if Mr. Price could not supply it, she would find it herself. Harlan Price told her, with the patience of a man who has delivered difficult news many times, that she was welcome to follow up through the standard channels in the days after the gala. He smiled. He moved on. Mrs. Ashton Vernal rose from her chair. She did not leave quickly. She gathered her envelope of documents and her clasp, and she stood for a moment at the window, looking down at the courtyard. And then she walked to the anteroom door, and through it, and the door closed behind her without a sound. Delia followed her. She told herself it was protocol. No juror unescorted in the main hall. That was in the coordinator's manual, and that was part of it. But the truth was that she had watched what had just happened, and something in it would not sit still, and she needed to be moving. The main hall of the Merrill Ashton was a long, high space with a limestone floor and, along the eastern wall, a sequence of marble donor panels that Delia had walked past 50 times without reading. The names were carved in relief, dark letters in pale stone, and most evenings she registered them the way she registered wallpaper. Mrs. Ashton Vernal walked slowly along the eastern wall, and Delia stayed 3 steps behind, and then the woman stopped. She stood in front of the largest of the panels, and Delia stopped too, and for the first time she read it. Merrill Ashton Hall of Arts, founded in enduring memory of Edmund Vernal, patron of record, Marguerite Ashton Vernal. Endowment established in perpetuity. Board Charter, Article 1. The founding patron shall hold a named seat in perpetuity on all standing committees of the hall. Delia read it twice. Mrs. Ashton Vernal turned slightly to look at her. Not to catch her reading it, Delia thought, but simply because she was aware of everything in the room, and had been from the moment she arrived. The woman's face was composed, her eyes level, and in them was no anger, and no performance of patience, and no appeal for sympathy. There was only a settled, private certainty, the kind that does not need a witness and does not perform for one. She took a small phone from her jacket pocket and placed a call. It lasted 4 minutes. Delia heard very little of it. Mrs. Ashton Vernal spoke quietly, and what she said was plain and factual. The evening's date, the name of the program director, a brief account of what had been said to her in the anteroom, a reference to the board charter's first article. She did not raise her voice. She did not repeat herself. When she ended the call, she returned the phone to her pocket, and she stood at the marble wall a moment longer, reading nothing in particular, or perhaps reading everything. Delia said, "Can I bring you anything? Tea? Or, no, Mrs. Ashton Vernal said, not unkindly. Thank you." They waited in the hall. 12 minutes passed. The hall filled slowly around them, guests arriving for the pre-gala reception, staff moving with trays, the low hum of an evening assembling itself. Through the tall windows, the courtyard had gone from amber to a clear, still blue. The board chair arrived at 7:22. His name was on the panel, too, 3 lines below hers, and Delia knew him by sight from the all-staff portraits in the administrative wing. A tall man in his late 60s, silver-haired, dressed for the gala. He came through the north entrance with 2 people she did not recognize and went directly to Mrs. Ashton Vernal and spoke to her briefly, and she nodded once, and then the 3 of them moved toward the board chamber at the end of the hall. The door to the board chamber opened and closed. Delia stood by the marble wall and waited, and tried to look as though she had a reason to be there, which she did, she told herself. She was the escort. She was on protocol. She watched the anteroom door across the hall, and at 7:31 it opened, and Harlan Price came out, moving with the careful speed of a man who has been summoned and knows it, and he went through the door of the board chamber. And the door closed behind him, and the hall continued its quiet filling up as though nothing had interrupted it. 14 minutes after the board chair had arrived, the chamber door opened again. Harlan Price did not return to the anteroom. He came out of the chamber, with his jacket buttoned, and his face arranged in the expression of a man enduring a thing he had decided to call a misunderstanding, and he walked directly to the north entrance and out of it. And the door swung closed, and a security liaison Delia had not seen before took up a quiet position near the anteroom. Mrs. Ashton Vernal came out of the chamber a moment later. She walked back along the eastern wall toward the anteroom, and as she passed the marble panel, she did not look at it, because she had never needed to look at it to know what it said. She passed Delia without hurrying and without theater, and at the anteroom door she stopped and turned. "Are there still water pitchers to be filled?" she said. Delia said there were. "Good," Mrs. Ashton Vernal said. "Let's not keep the panel waiting." She went in. Delia stood for a moment in the hall alone, the marble names at her back, the low sound of the reception building beyond the walls, the last of the courtyard's blue light going silver in the windows. She thought about the picture she had set down. She thought about the 11 minutes she had stood in that anteroom. Before she understood that something had gone wrong, she thought about how long it had taken her to read the wall she had walked past 50 times, and what it meant that a man with a title and a pressed suit had never read it either. She picked up her clipboard. She went in.